Hello, welcome back. This is episode 2 of my campaign diary series. As always, this episode is divided into 2 parts. The first part where I tell you what happened, and the second part where I tell you some of the things I learned, and some of my DM tips, and some of the things that went wrong. If you want to see that part and skip over the first part, just go to this timestamp. When last we left our heroes, they had set forth on their adventure. They delivered some magical components to a wizard named Toster. They found out that a girl was missing, and so they set out, met up with a local ranger to find this girl, but they couldn't find any tracks of her. So they went up with this ranger, and they met with Olean the druid, and they decided to help track down this kid, this werebear. When we left off, the orc attack had ended, and I made the party level 3. And all the players set in for the night. In the morning, Orlean got up and they saw her communicating with a fox. After a minute, she comes back to the party and says, "Hey, I talked to that fox over there. These orcs came from the dark heart of the forest." And the players are like, "The dark heart of the forest, is that important?" And Orlean's like, "Yeah, that's perhaps." And she says, "As much as I would like to help you guys and continue on searching for this kid, something tells me that I really should go check on these orcs and see where they came from and see what's going on." And so she asks, "Can you guys take care of this for me?" And the party's like, "Yeah, sure, we can go on. We can take care of this." So Orlean thanks them, and she goes off, and she goes to find the orcs. Meanwhile, the party and Cooper the ranger, they get ready for the day. And they spend the next few hours continuing the trail, tracking this werebear through the woods. Cooper tells all the players that not to slash at this werebear. This werebear is still a kid. We don't want to scare him. He gives 2 of the players nets, and he says, when we see it, just throw these things onto him, and I'll try to calm him down. If you have to fight back, please use either your fist or the butt of your weapon. Just don't slash at this guy at all. And so the players nod a little bit, they understand. This is a kid, they don't want to harm him. After a few hours of walking through the woods, the party eventually, they see a shape moving in the distance, and Cooper tells them to hold on. He says, "All right, I think we found him," because they see the brown shape moving through, and he says, "Everybody get ready." And so I had them roll initiative, but I gave them a couple rounds to prepare and get anything ready. And after a couple rounds, this bear rushes through, and Cooper says, "All right, everybody, throw your nets." And then, so Cooper and 2 of the players all throw their nets onto this werebear. This werebear then spends the next couple rounds trying to shake off the nets, and Cooper is going forward, and he's talking to the bear. He's trying to get it to calm down. The players are punching the bear, which gives Cooper disadvantage, but eventually they're able to have this werebear calm down. And Cooper casts Speak with Animals, and he talks to him. He has a small little conversation, and eventually he pulls the nets off the werebear, and the werebear gets up and shakes off a little bit. He's like, "Okay, look, this kid is calm now. He's going to follow us, and I think we should take him back to this guy's home, because if I know anything about werebears and kind of the condition he's afflicted with, it's the morning now. This kid should wear off any minute." And so the party's like, "All right, sure, we can take this kid home." And so Cooper and the party, with the werebear traveling behind them, they all make their way to the Crinan farm. The Crinans are, one of the farms in between Milburn and Thurmaster, more towards Thurmaster than Cooper's is. And eventually this kid turns back into a kid rather than a werebear. So with this, they eventually get to the Crinan farm, and Cooper goes and he talks with the boy's father, and they have a little conversation out of earshot of the other players, because he doesn't want a drow, a tiefling, a half-orc, and a warforged creature to just grow up on this guy's farm. So he tells him, "Just stay back a little bit, let me talk to this guy." And so eventually he comes back, and he says, "All right, everything should be fine now with this kid," but he doesn't really go into much detail. And so he says, "Well, we don't have any hint on where Jelena is. We couldn't find any trail of her. And now that this is over, the only thing that I think that y'all could do is that if y'all could just find my other ranger friend Gerald in Millburn. If you could just go to him, find him, and tell him everything that's happened, that would save me a lot of trouble. So the party's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Cooper asks them, if they want to come back to his place for the night, just to, rest, get back some of their hit points. And the party says yes, and they go back and they spend the day at his house. It's at this point Cooper goes over to Alden, which is kind of the leader of the party, and he puts a ring in his hand. He says, here, I can tell you guys are going to be doing great things. This is something for you. They spend a while identifying the ring, and they find out that it is a ring of free action. I'll probably put like a thing here somewhere. So after that, they make their way back to Millburn. They go back, and they talk with Gerald, and they tell him everything. And Gerald kind of writes down everything they're talking about, and he whistles, and he summons a crow to his shoulder, like out the window, and he gives the letter to the crow, and the crow flies out, and everything's all good with there. He says, all right, I'm sending this, I'm telling you everything you said, I'm sending it to my friend Shiraz, because he's more mobile than I am. This guy had some kind of accident in the past, and he doesn't walk well anymore. And so Gerald is like, yeah, I'm sending this to my friend Shiraz. If I find anything out, I'll let you guys know. And the party isn't used to not meeting a new NPC and not immediately be giving some kind of job. It's like, oh, okay. They, finish up their conversation with Gerald, and they leave his house, and they go back to the tavern/inn that they've been staying in, called the Baron of Mutton. And upon arriving, they see Andrin, the guy looking for his girlfriend, Jelenith, and they ask him, he asks them, oh, have you gotten any word back? And the party's like, one of the players, Zoogle, he decided to be particularly evil in that moment, and he said, hey, yeah, she's dead. And the guy's like, what? No, she can't be dead. I've seen her power. She's a wizard, have you seen her body? And the party's like, no, but yeah, she's dead. And so they basically, piss this guy off. And so they leave. He leaves. He just, stops talking with them and just goes off to, vent, because he's kind of angry that they're making a joke about this serious thing, this person going missing. So after talking with him, they go up and they talk to Durcaster, which is the half-blind, half-deaf owner of this tavern they've been staying in. They've talked to him a couple times. And they ask him if there's any work to do in the area, and he's like, well, I have a barge that I need to be taken up to Thurmaster to get supplies and bring back to me. I'll give you guys 15 gold each if you can just take it up there and bring it back with no trouble. And the party accepts, because they have to go back to Thurmaster anyway to get their 10 gold from Toster for talking with Cooper. They accept, but they haggle him up for 20 gold. Durcaster's fine with that, and he says, alright, it doesn't have to be today, just whenever you guys get a chance, go ahead and do that. And so Checkers, who is, one of the fighters, he says, during this time, while we're resting in Millburn, do you think I can send a letter to my clan? We kind of learned a little bit about Checkers' backstory. He is part of a samurai clan, that's part of his background, and he wants to get permission for his temple to improve his blade. And so we spend a while, he wants to get a letter sent to Black Bottom, which is the local big city, and then from Black Bottom it can be sent to any small town. It's the hub area. And he talks with one of the letter carriers, and he's like, it'll be 10 gold to get it there on normal time, which is take about a week. 20 gold if you want to get there in half the time, 3 days. And so he's like, well, 20 gold's a little expensive. Is there anything I can do to reduce the costs? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. If you go get the materials, the horses, the food, everything that we're going to need to take this letter up there, because this is a special request. This isn't going out with all the other mail that goes out maybe once a month or so. This is a special letter. So he goes around town, and he's able to, he goes to Nafton's stable and kennel, and he gets some horses, and he goes to the general store and gets some food, and he's able to reduce the cost to really only 6 gold out of pocket to get everything, back and forth. And he knows that when the letter gets to Black Bottom, it'll be sent to the temple, and then the temple will just send a message, with magic, or they'll send, a raven or something to bring a letter back. And so he does that, and I ask the party if there's anything else they want to do. They say no. And so after that, they finally get on the barge, and they make their way to Thurmaster. It's an uneventful 2 days travel by barge. They get there, and while they're waiting for the barge to get refueled, they head over to Toster's place, and Toster, he's happy that they did the letter, but he's sad to learn that they didn't find anything about Jelena. He gives them the 10 gold for delivering the letter, and they ask him, okay, is there any kind of job you have for us? Because they're waiting, they want the story to advance. They want to get paid for finding this girl. And he's like, nope, don't have anything. And so they're like, man, there's no jobs in this area, which I found quite funny. When they get in with Toster's house, he says, I don't have any jobs for you. The only thing I can think of is that over in the Mire's flooding, but you guys can't change the weather, so, the player's like, oh, so you're underestimating us. And he's like, no, I just don't think you can change the laws of nature. But, the Mire doesn't affect me. I'm all the way over here in Thurmaster. That really affects the people in Millburn, or those areas. So, if you think, if there's work, you'll probably be able to, go over there and find some. And so the party's like, oh, okay. So the barge gets filled up, and they head on back to Millburn to collect their gold for the barge. And while they're coming back, they see that there is a family in the exchange auctioning off all their goods and their belongings and all their farm equipment. And they learn that the Mire is flooding. The Mire is kind of like a marsh area, and it's expanding because of all the water. And it's making much of farmland useless because the soil is so soggy that they can't plant anything. And so these farmers basically have to move. They have to sell their home and go somewhere where they can farm because you just can't, you can't fix the land. And I say, there's an auction going on. They're auctioning off the house. And one of the party goes, what's the auction for the house? And I go, right now it's going for 80 gold. And so we go through a little bit of an auction thing. And this goes on for a while. Eventually they get the price up to like 200 gold, I think it was. And they win the deed to this house. Which I was like, I don't know if 200 is expensive or extremely cheap. I'll have to figure that out later. But they get the deed. And while this is happening, a gentleman comes up to them and he says, I work for the mayor of the town. I work for Mayor Carmen, and he wants to speak with y'all privately. So they go up to the mansion, and the mayor's waiting for them, and he's like, so you guys are pretty important. You've been doing a lot of good for the local area. There's a problem going on in the Mire. You've probably heard of it. And the party's like, yeah, we heard of it. Well, I hired somebody to go see what was wrong with it, and I had to hire a diviner to go find out. And all the diviner could tell me was that they don't know what the problem is, but they know it has something to do with magic because the water and the soil, it has like a magical aura to it. And the party's like, oh, okay. And he's like, I'll give you all 50 gold each to spend 2 weeks going over there, scouting around, just to see what's going on, if you can see anything wrong. He says, if you can solve the problem, don't know what it is, but, it's magic, you're a group of adventurers. If you can solve the problem, I'll give your whole party 1,000 gold. And at this point, the players are like, 1,000 gold, that's more money than we've, gotten so far. So they're pretty adamant about this, and they want to go check out the new house. So they accept the deal, and they walk down to the Mire, and they spend the next few days scouting around, looking for things. They check out their new house. Their new house is in disrepair. All the wood is water damaged. And I say, there's some holes in the roof. You have a cellar, you have a barn, you have a couple of bedrooms, but you're gonna need to put in a lot of gold to make this house, up to be looking new. And they say, okay, how much to make it look new? And I go, Oh, about 1,000 gold, which I didn't think about it until after. But I was like, hey, that's useful. And they said, okay, how much just to make it livable? And I said, you can probably make it livable for 200. And so they were getting ready to put all their money together to get this house updated, but they decided to hold off. They're just going to wait until they finish the job. So after a couple days of, more scouting, they eventually find this group of kids that's hanging around in the divide between the New Mire and the Patchwork Hills. And they overhear one of these kids telling some older kids, he's like, yeah, I saw like a dozen monsters, and they were like 50 feet tall, and they had this blue skin, they had thousands of teeth. It was crazy. It was like the middle of the night, and I was super stealthy, and I saw them. And so the party makes an insight check, and they roll pretty well. And I said, it's pretty obvious this kid is lying through his teeth, but there's some truth to it. Dusk, he gives the kid a couple silver, and the kid's pretty excited, and so he brings Dusk off to the side, and Dusk, asks him, okay, what's the real story? And the kid's like, well, okay, maybe there weren't dozens of monsters, maybe there were like 4, maybe they weren't 50 feet tall, maybe they were only like 4, but they did have sharp teeth, they had a lot of pointed teeth, and they did have blue skin. So the kid describes these monsters, and the player who plays Zoogle goes, this kid's talking about goblins. And I go, well, maybe. He's like, well, can I make an intelligence check to see if, just to see if my character would know that? And I thought, well, you know it, but, whatever. Yeah, go ahead and make a roll. The player pulled good. And I said, yeah, he's definitely talking about goblins, but you've never heard of goblins with blue skin. So that was kind of interesting. The kid points the party in the direction. He said, I saw them where the river ends in the New Mire over there. But that's really all I know. And the party's like, oh, okay, thanks, kid. You have a good day. Stay safe. And so they spend the next few hours, and they go over to where this kid pointed, and they find a cave entrance. I have them all make stealth checks, and they roll pretty good. And I see you approach this cave. You're hiding among the weeds. I mean, you're moving pretty slow through the water, but you're moving slow enough to where it's pretty stealthy. And I see you see 2 goblins sitting at the edge of this cave with blue skin, and have them make perception checks, and they can see that these goblins have like tattoos on their foreheads. And one of the players asks, so how far apart are the goblins? And I said, well, the cave entrance is about 5 to 10 feet wide. They're standing on either side of the cave entrance. They're just kind of looking around. They're not actively looking. They're more just like, pretty bored. One of the players says, all right, do you think I could sneak past these guys? And I said, well, it's difficult terrain you're moving through. You're moving very slowly. It's pretty loud. I'm going to say you're going to have disadvantage on the roll, and these guys are going to have advantage on perception checks to find you. But these guys are pretty dumb, and so they think about it for a while. And Alden and Dusk get together, and Alden says, I cast darkness at the point between these 2 goblins. And darkness is a spell I believe he gets from his drow ancestry or whatever. And he says, when I cast darkness, I'm also going to cast Path Without a Trace, and we are going to book it in between these goblins. And I go, are you sure you want to do that? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. So I go, okay, make a roll. Both of you make stealth checks with disadvantage, and I roll perception with advantage. And these guys rolled like 1 and 2 and like 3 and 4. And the players rolled really high. They're like, with the Pass Without a Trace, that gives me up to like a 23, 24. I think Alden got like a 29 or something. It's crazy. And so I say, well, despite all odds, you're able to slip through. The goblins definitely hear something, and they see the darkness, but they don't know what it is. And when the darkness clears, they look around, but they don't see anything. And so they're now on very active watch. But you guys made it inside the cave. So the guys are like, all right, cool. And so I showed them a map of the cave. kind of covering up the parts that they can't see yet. And they explore these, 4 rooms, and I have them, again, roll stealth checks. They roll really good, and they go through room by room, and they say, okay, this cave has 6 goblins in it, this cave has 8 goblins, this cave has a bunch of women and children, and Alden goes by himself, and he goes to the last little entrance, and he peeks through, and he sees a goblin leader on a throne, surrounded by 4 goblin soldiers and 2 women, and another guy dressed in robes. And I say, you could tell these guys are talking. And I said, do you speak goblin? And he's like, no. So I said, okay, you don't hear what they're saying. But I say, you can just tell, because this is a smart character, that the goblin that the leader is talking to is a shaman, because he's wearing robes, and he's got, the hat, and, he has a staff and all this. And I say, this is Goblin Shaman. He's like, alright, cool. And I say, also you see on the Goblin King's finger, he has a very silver ring. It's very intricate, because he rolled really good on perception. But that's the only thing you can see. So he goes, alright, cool. And so him and Dusk make their way back to the cave entrance. And they say, so, can I just go up behind these guys and slit their throats? I say, well, no. You can try. I say, you're gonna roll with advantage to hit, and then you'll surprise them, so you'll get 2 attacks off in a row. And so hopefully, and these guys don't have a lot of hit points, you should be able to kill them. And so him and Dusk simultaneously, they go up and they try to stab these goblins with daggers. Alden kills one of these goblins immediately, but Dusk leaves the goblin with 1 hit point left. And I say, okay, this guy, he's about to scream, but go ahead and make your second attack. And Dusk stabs this goblin through the heart and goes all the way through his chest and up into his brain. And I go, okay, you're good. They drag these goblins' bodies off into the marsh area, and they take a short rest. They take an hour just to see if any goblins come out to investigate. And I say, no, you don't see anything. So I'm like, alright. So the whole party decides to make their way down into the goblin caves. So the party starts making their way into the goblin caves, and the majority of the party stops at the first cave entrance, and they see the 6 goblins, and they're getting ready. And I say, make stealth checks, and they roll pretty average, but one of them rolls pretty bad. So I say, as you guys are approaching the first turn, the first turn off into the cave, into one of these side passages, you hear the goblins that were, being loud and everything, you hear them go quiet, and they go, oh, crap, they know that we're here. They're going to come charge out any second at us. So they start, readying attacks and everything, and they say, as soon as a goblin comes out, we're going to attack all of them. And they're surprised when no goblins come out. After a couple minutes, nothing comes out. And so the monk character takes one of the bandages off his hand, one of his hand wraps off. He gives it to ADS, the Warforged fighter. And ADS has a tinder box, so he lights the thing on fire and he puts it on the end of his crossbow bolt. And I go, okay, yeah, sure, you can do that. And he says, I'm going to charge in with the crossbow bolt, with a crossbow, and see what's going on. And I say, okay, you charge in, and you see 6 goblins up against the wall. And as soon as they see you, they start screaming, and they throw their swords into the center of the room. And they start holding their hand up, and he's like, well, that was easy. These goblins are scared. They're extremely scared of the heroes. So ADS, he's kind of taking care of it. He kind of goes back and, not taking his eyes off, but he's like, guys, I think I got it pretty handled here if you all want to continue. And so the rest of the party is like, yeah, sure. Well, let me rephrase that. One person in the party is like, yeah, sure. And that one player is, as you probably guessed, Alden. He's like, you guys wait here. I gotta go do something. And so he sneaks up back to the goblin leader's room. So, you see them still talking, and he walks in, and immediately the 4 goblin soldiers, jump up and they get ready to attack, but they don't attack. They hold off as Alden walks into the room, and the goblin leaders ask, what are you doing here? Why are you in my cave? And Alden's like, we're here for information. And the goblin leader's like, what kind of information do you wish to seek? So Alden's like, we want to come in here and ask if you guys know why the world above, the marsh is expanding, why it's flooding. And the goblin leader's like, look, I don't have anything to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about. And he kind of calms down a little bit, realizing this guy isn't here to kill them. He's like, let's just talk like, civilized people. I know that we're goblins and he's going to say human, but he's like, you're something, some kind of elf, because I don't know if he's ever seen a drow before. And so he calls off his guards, and we learn that his guards are his 4 sons, and the 2 women are his 2 wives. And they start talking. I said, what's your passive insight or something, or make an intelligence check. And he told me, and I say, as you're talking about this, you see the shaman kind of, getting a little nervous, a little uncomfortable. And so he switches directions from the goblin leader to the goblin shaman. And he's like, it's like, what do you know? And the goblin shaman's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I had to roll an insight, and the goblin shaman was lying. He rolled poor deception. So Alden turns back to the leader, and he says, I think your shaman knows what's going on here. And the goblin leader's like, really? Well, tell me, shaman, what's going on? And the shaman's like, well, I don't know what's going on, but I think it has something to do with, your great ring, my great leader. And the goblin chieftain looks at his ring, and he's like, what, you mean this one? And the goblin shaman's like, yes. The shaman then goes on to explain about how the ring is the holy relic by the goblin god Maglubiet, and the player character is like, well, this is a load of bull, but, continue, and the goblin shaman's like, well, this is a holy item. I don't know what it does, but I know that it is of great magical power, and it comes from our god, and that it may or may not be causing the local area to be flooding. And so the player's like, okay, now where did you really find this ring? Because the goblin shaman was like, oh, Maglubieta, he came to me, and he gave this ring to me personally, and I, being a great shaman and respecting my leader so much, I gave it to my leader. And the leader looks at this, and he looks at the ring, and he takes it off, and he's like, well, we can probably settle this. What do you want? And the player character's like, okay, where did you really get this ring? It's like he's kind of ignoring the goblin leader, and the goblin's leader like, alright, whatever. And the shaman continues to lie, and the player tells the goblin leader, your shaman is lying to me, I can tell. The goblin leader doesn't like lying, so he says, shaman, why, what is the truth? And the shaman looks at the leader, and he's like, alright, maybe Maglubiet didn't give it to me personally, but I found it in a cave, in the deepest, darkest area of the cave. And so the player's satisfied with that answer, but the shaman's like, but it's still a relic, it's still a holy item. You can tell by the aura it gives off. So the shaman explains, even though this item might be causing problems, it's still important to our people. And so the player's like, alright, well, I want it. And I think he's starting to get annoyed. He doesn't like it. It's been too long before he's killed something. And so he starts being like, just give it to me, or I'm going to take it from you. And the goblin shaman, which I don't think they ever asked what the shaman or the leader's names were. But I think the goblin shaman's name was like Baruch Lietz, and the leader's name was like Grundelek or something. Grundle, I don't know. They never asked the name, so they never learned. Which might come back to bite them in the butt later, but we'll talk about that. And so the shaman's like, if you give me an item of equal holiness, in other words, if you give me a magic item, I'll give you this ring. And the player's like, I'll give you the ring, you give me the ring, and I'll let you keep your life. And so now he's actively threatening the shaman and his leader, and he's starting to be like a little edgy. He's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you if you don't do this. And I'm like, dude, you're in the shaman, like, you're in the orc's cave. And this guy's like, I don't care. I use thaumaturgy. I make my eyes flare with purple fire, and I say, "Give me the ring." And I say, "Okay." He's like, "Can I roll intimidation?" And I say, "No, because these guys aren't intimidated. They know, like, the shaman knows what magic this is, and the goblin leader will not show fear in the presence of, his children or in the eyes of his people. The goblin leader and the goblin champion are like the only guys that can't be frightened, is what I kind of interpreted this as. And so at this point, Dusk comes in. He's like, "Alright, whoa. Yeah, Alden, shut up." He's like, "Alright, sure, we'll give you a magic item." And she pulls out a shield. She says, "I pull out my shield." And I thought for a second, I was like, "Oh, is this the magic shield?" And she's like, "No, this is the regular shield." And I say, I put it in front of the ground, and she says, there's our magic shield that we got from these orcs. You can have it." And so I say, well, the shaman, he waves his fingers over it. He starts to cast Detect Magic. And Dusk is like, "Alright, fine." But they do not want to give up any magic items because, they only have maybe 2 or 3 magic items. And so they say, "I attack the shaman," and I go, "Oh, okay, roll initiative." So they threw out all negotiations out the window. And so I have roll initiative, and I say, as you start attacking the shaman, the goblin leader, he blows his horn, and it echoes throughout the chamber, and all the goblins who were frightened now immediately become immune to it. And so we go into combat, and they have about 14 goblins rushing into this cave. Now, I learned later, this was for first level adventurers. So while there are 14 goblins, they have about 8 hit points, and they slaughter these goblins. Like, the monk is doing 30 damage a turn. The warlock is who Dusk is. Dusk is a warlock. He casts Shatter, and even though half the people succeeded, the damage was enough to kill everyone except for the shaman and the leader. So they spend the next few rounds, and they kill a lot of these goblins. They don't leave a single one left alive, except for one goblin who got away. The shaman's casting Cold Person, and they're going for it, and they're attacking the goblin leader. And eventually they kill everyone, except for the one goblin who got away. And they pick up this ring, and they look at it, and they can feel its magical presence. It's very... they can just tell that there's some high-level magic in this ring. And that is where we left off. They were like, "Oh, we totally decimated all those goblins." And I said, you let one of them get away. And he was like, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to take care of that. He's still in the cave, alright?" So I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And so that's where we left it off. And next session is coming up in 3 days. We play again this Friday. And so I will probably make another episode of this whenever that comes around. But for now, we are going to move on to the section where I talked about some of the things that happen behind the screen and all that. So if you just skip to this timestamp, then we're talking about what happened behind the screen and what was supposed to happen and what actually happened and things I messed up with and all this other crazy crap. So, first things first, I made a major mistake in making the characters 3rd level because they stormed through every encounter. It was no problem. I messed up a few times when it came to the pacing because I forgot that the auction was, they were supposed to see the auction immediately whenever they came back into town, but, I held off. I messed up on the pacing a couple times. Just because I was still scurrying through my notes trying to find everything, because I have all the stuff about Milburn over here and all the stuff about Thurmaster over here, but then we have all the current stuff that's happening all the way over here. So I'm constantly flipping back and forth between pages. It was fun, it was a mess, I'm going to have to be better prepared next time, but I learned from it. The whole situation with the werebear, it was just very slow. They did perfectly fine. It's my fault because I didn't get a chance to really read a lot because we ran these sessions one after the other, basically. Like, the first session we ran from 7 o'clock to, like, 12 in the morning, and then the next session we ran from, like, 12 o'clock to 1 in the morning. Other than that, I confused some of the people. I thought that Geralt he is a ranger, but he's also the town's carpenter, which I thought he was, if you read the original adventure. Geralt is the carpenter, and the old Grizzler is another character, but I'll start to get those two confused. But it's alright, I'll take care of it next time. There's no really problem with that. They bought a house. Wasn't intending on them doing that, but it happened. So, now I have to make a house plan. That's going to be great. I already started working on some designs and everything. And I'm going to have them make it their house, you know. They're going to get to pick what's going to be in it, and I say you can expand on it or whatever. So I'm looking forward to that. As for prepping, I didn't really do a lot of prep. I prepped, like, I sat down an hour before the session started, and I started reading through the adventure and some of the pages, and, you know, I took some pictures of the maps and everything that I was going to be using. And luckily, I printed this adventure out, and I put it in a 3-ring binder, so whenever I needed to take something, like if I needed a map or something, I could just take the map out of the 3-ring binder and have it with me and put it back when I was done. So that was nice. I didn't prepare any stats for anything, really, except in the moment, I decided that these guys were going to smoke these goblins. So I upped the goblins a little bit on HP, not that it helped, and then I gave the goblin leader, excuse me. I gave the goblin leader the stats for an ogre. Which, was that good or bad? I don't know. It was tough. It was a nice encounter. And I gave the shaman some cool spells. That was pretty nice. I really thought the players were going to negotiate with these goblins. And I was kind of sad to see that they resorted back to their motor hobo-ness. But then we talked about it after the session, and they were like, you know, I wish we could have negotiated, but these goblins, they're goblins. They would have caused some kind of trouble later on. Little did they know that the goblins could have been pretty good allies, but we'll get to that in the future whenever we go over that in the next session, if that comes up. I started reading a few pages ahead, so now I'm pretty caught up. That whole goblin adventure, everything that's happened from the beginning of the campaign until now, is all first level stuff. And these guys are just about to turn second level in the book, but these guys are third level now, which means I'm going to have to bump up a ton of encounters or skip over a bunch of content. Don't know which one I'm going to do. I'll have to look at it and see. In terms of where the campaign's going to go next, the party should go back and reclaim their prize, and probably, I think they're going to fix up their house and everything, but we'll have to see about that. I recorded this video right after the last one, that's why I'm wearing the same shirt. I have a light here that's blinding me whenever I look up at it, so I can get the actual lighting right, so I can use this laptop webcam as my camera. I hope you guys are enjoying the episode so far. I can't wait to make a third episode of this campaign diary series. And I may or may not, depending on if this gets any traction or do well, I will cover my Against the Cult of the Reptile God campaign, which is happening right now. I have 2 campaigns running on. One for a group of 5 of my friends, and one which is a one-on-one game between me and my 12-year-old brother, and we're running Against the Cult of the Reptile God, and that's a blast, but we'll cover that maybe one over the day. I don't know. It depends on the feedback. I'm also thinking about starting a series where I go through page and I talk about how I'm prepping this adventure, but I'm kind of giving y'all that in this, so I don't feel like that's very necessary until we get further down into the adventure. You may, if you watch Matt Colville, you notice that I mentioned the city Black Bottom, and indeed, my world is an altered version of Matt Colville's world, so you can see I have a lot of Matt Colville influence. This series was an influence. The adventure this adventure was an influence of his because he ran Night Below, I think, and that inspired me. And so I kind of use an altered version of his world. I use some of the city names because they're cool, but I don't have a lot of the same lore because I don't know too much about the lore of his world. I initially planned on everyone freaking out about these players because we have a drow, a tiefling, a warforged, and a half-orc. I was expecting a lot worse, but I decided, but like in the moment, you kind of forget that the party isn't just a group of humans sitting around the table. So, we'll have to see if I can do that later. One of the players, Zoogle, who is the half-orc cleric, he asked me if he can identify this item like he did last time. And we talked about it for a while, and I said, well, even if you could, you wouldn't learn anything from it because of the nature of this item. As it says in the book, it says that even casting Identify on this item doesn't tell you anything except that it's a water-based item. And so, but we're still talking about whether or not he as a cleric should be able to just take a short rest and learn the nature of an item. But I'm going to see about that. Let me know if you have any ideas. Also, let me know if you know of any good programs to map out this house they bought. Right now I'm using Dungeonographer and Worldographer, but I don't have premium subscriptions to those. And while I do have a subscription, I don't have the Battlemat subscription, so it's hard. The player who plays Dusk, Dusk is a man, but the player is a woman. That's why I say she and he. Mix them up sometimes, excuse me. But the player, she is a pretty good artist, so I asked her if she would like to, create the layout or draw it or whatever, and she said yes to that, so we're going to see where that goes. That's it for now. Next episode, the party should be collecting their reward and perhaps continuing on into finding out more about where this woman went, where Jelenoth is, and all this good stuff. So that is it for this episode of my campaign diary. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
Get underway, sell a cow. 60, 70, 50, 60, 80, $70 now, $5 70 and a half, $1 71 50, and one and a half, $1 1 quarter half, $1 70 $5 your true, and 150 75, $5 75 $5 150 gonna be $75 $5 1 70 $5 so 71 50.